They were the family everyone admired, polished, tight-knit, full of Southern charm and promise. A mother with a heart of gold, a father who coached kids in the neighborhood, a teenage son. And then there was Enola, a viral TikTok personality, building a life for her little girl. But behind their filtered photos and family cookouts, something sinister was watching, waiting. To her thousands of followers, she was the definition of strength and grace. But inside the walls of their Baton Rouge home, on one unforgettable morning, that perfect image was shattered forever. The live stream started with a whisper, "She took everything from me. Now I'm taking it all back." Then came the chaos, footsteps pounding, a woman's voice pleading, a child crying out, and then, the words no one watching could ever forget, "Ty, please, not in front of her." And then, gunfire. Screams. Silence. By the time the screen went black, 5 people were either dead or dying, and thousands of viewers had witnessed the most horrifying crime ever streamed on social media. What makes a man kill not just the woman who left him, but her entire bloodline? How does obsession turn a father into an executioner, and a home into a slaughterhouse? Before we dig into the twisted mind behind this digital massacre, make sure to like this video and subscribe, where we bring you the darkest tales of love, jealousy, and betrayal that end in murder. In the sweltering summer heat of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 25-year-old Enola Devereaux was living what looked like a dream life to the outside world. She had the kind of beauty that made people stop scrolling, glossy curls, glowing skin, and a soft southern drawl that wrapped around your ears like warm honey. On TikTok, she was everyone's favorite big sister, the one who told you which drugstore foundation actually worked and how to slay on a budget. Her "Get Ready With Me" videos racked up tens of thousands of views, with followers praising her authenticity and the adorable guest star who appeared in almost every clip, her 3-year-old daughter, Yariya, who already had her mother's sass and smile. But the glow didn't stop at Enola. Her family was the kind people in the community pointed to with pride. Her mother, Misha, was the kind of school administrator who remembered your name, your birthday, and if your mama was sick. Her father, Odell, Coach D to just about everyone, was a former Army vet who ran a youth football league that kept dozens of kids off the streets and focused on their futures. And then there was Trayvon, the baby of the family. 17, sharp, and respectful, he had a 4.0 GPA, had already taken his ASVAB, and was planning to enlist in the Air Force after graduation. The Devereaux were everything a strong black Southern family was supposed to be: loving, ambitious, disciplined, united. From the outside, they looked unbreakable. But social media only shows what you want people to see. And Enola was hiding something that had been festering for years, just out of frame. His name was Tyrone Merriweather, though most people just called him Ty. To some, he was the charming older guy with the tattoos and the big smile. To others, he was trouble the moment he stepped into a room. But to Enola, he was her first real heartbreak. And her biggest regret. They met when she was just 16, young, impressionable, and flattered by the attention of a 22-year-old who knew all the right things to say. He pulled up outside her school in a candy-red Charger and told her she was too fine to be walking in the heat. At first, it felt like a fairy tale. He bought her gifts, showed up to her games, made her feel like a woman before she even knew what that meant. But the fairy tale turned to fear quicker than she could understand. Ty was controlling from the start. He didn't like her wearing certain outfits. Didn't want her talking to other guys. He'd blow up her phone if she didn't text back fast enough, then flip it into an apology so smooth, it made her question if she was the one overreacting. He isolated her from her friends, fought with her family, and used their daughter, Yariya, as a tool to keep a leash on her long after the relationship had ended. Over time, Enola began to pull away. The cheating became impossible to ignore. The lies stacked too high. Then in 2022, Ty was arrested for assaulting another ex-girlfriend, a brutal attack that left the woman hospitalized. That was Enola's wake-up call. After the breakup, something inside Tyrone Merriweather snapped. It wasn't the typical heartbreak, the kind that fades with time, or even the bitter kind that lingers in silence. No, this was the kind that festers, warps, and poisons. Ty couldn't accept that Enola had moved on. In his mind, she was his. Always had been, always would be. And if he couldn't have her, no one else could. At first, it was the calls, dozens a day from blocked numbers, sometimes saying nothing at all, just breathing on the line. Other times, he'd whisper things like, "I miss you, baby," or "I saw what you wore today. You think that dress hides anything?" He left roses on her windshield outside the hospital, every shift, a new one, always with a note, "Still yours." Then it escalated. He followed her to work. Waited outside the ER parking lot until 2 a.m., leaning against his car, eyes locked on her like he had all the time in the world. When she threatened to call the police, he laughed. "You think they can save you from me?" The final straw came in February 2023. Enola had just gotten Yariya into her booster seat when Ty showed up out of nowhere, screaming at her in the driveway. He had a crowbar in one hand and rage in his eyes. He smashed her car windows, glass flying, her daughter crying, while neighbors ran out and called 911. That night, Enola filed for a restraining order. She told the court she was afraid for her life, and even more afraid for her daughters. The judge granted it. Tyrons was ordered to stay 500 feet away from her home, job, and child. And just like that, he disappeared. For months, it was quiet. No calls. No sightings. Not even a cryptic DM from one of his fake accounts. It was as if the storm had passed. Enola finally began to breathe again. She'd just been accepted into a competitive nursing program in New Orleans, something she'd worked toward for years. She was making travel plans, starting to save up for a move, even looking into preschools for Yariya. Her smile got wider. Her content got lighter. She started showing more of her family again, crawfish boils, football games, backyard laughs with Trayvon. Her followers noticed. "You look happy again," they'd comment. And she was. Her family, relieved, started planning a surprise birthday party for Jariya's 4th birthday. Unicorn theme. Face painting. A bounce house in the yard. Trayvon was in charge of music, and Coach D had promised to man the grill. They were finally moving forward. But the thing about men like Tyrons, they don't move on. They plot in silence. What Enola didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the quiet wasn't peace. It was planning. Tyrons hadn't let go. He'd just gone underground. No more loud threats. No more smashed windows. Just stillness. Waiting. Watching. And by the time he resurfaced, it wouldn't be with flowers or voicemails. It would be with a gun. They all thought life was good, not until July 15th. It started with a notification. 6:03 a.m., phones vibrated, tablets pinged, Facebook lit up with an ominous message, "Y'all wanna see real pain?" Most people assumed it was another one of Tyron's rants. He'd always been dramatic, unhinged, and angry online. He'd posted long, cryptic statuses in the past. Dark memes. Passive-aggressive jabs. But this was different. The live stream opened to the glow of early morning light filtering through a cracked windshield. Tyrons was sitting in his car, hoodie pulled low, jaw clenched. There was no music, no introduction, just silence, and his voice, low, cracked, vibrating with something sinister. "She took everything from me," he whispered, almost too soft to hear. "Now I'm gonna take everything from her." Behind him, the Devereaux house stood quiet and still, the porch light still on from the night before. You could see a child's scooter tipped over in the yard. A garden hose. Wind chimes barely moving. It was the kind of morning that should have been peaceful. But peace was the furthest thing from what was coming. With a GoPro strapped to his chest and his phone balanced on the dashboard, Tyron stepped out of the car. In his hand was a Glock 17. He didn't run. He didn't sneak. He walked calmly up to the door, which had been left unlocked. Coach D always said, "Ain't no need for locks when the whole neighborhood got your back." The screen shook as the door creaked open. Odell was the first. He was in the recliner, remote in hand, watching ESPN highlights. He barely had time to look up. One shot. Then another. Then a third. His body jerked, then slumped. The camera caught the blood splatter on the beige wall behind him, the way the TV kept playing like nothing had happened. Misha came running from the kitchen, screaming his name. Her voice cracked, raw with terror, "Odell." Oh, before she could finish, Tyrons turned and fired. Point blank. The bullet hit her in the head. She collapsed instantly, her slipper sliding off as she crumpled onto the tiled floor. It was chaos, but Tyrons moved with precision. Trayvon was next. 17. Honor student. He'd been in the upstairs bathroom brushing his teeth. When he heard the shots, he grabbed a kitchen knife and ran downstairs to protect his family. The footage caught the moment they collided, Trayvon lunging, Tyrons grabbing him by the collar and throwing him into the fridge. The boy fought. Screamed. Slashed. But it wasn't enough. Ty fired 6 rounds into him, even after he hit the ground. You could hear the knife clatter against the tile. For a moment, there was only heavy breathing on the stream. The sound of footsteps. Tyrons was heading upstairs. Enila's voice came next, frantic and trembling, "Ty, please. Not here. Not with her here." You could hear her sobbing. You could hear Yariya crying, too, high-pitched, confused, calling for her mommy. The camera caught a glimpse of a bedroom wall covered in pastel butterflies. A pink toddler bed. Then blackness. The screen went dark, but the audio continued for 3 more seconds. One shot. Then another. And then, nothing. Silence. For the 3,200 people who watched it live, it was like witnessing something you weren't supposed to see. Not a murder. A massacre. A digital execution. Some thought it was staged, there was denial, disbelief. Others screamed, cried, vomited. The comment section exploded with horror, "Call the cops. This can't be real. Someone do something." It was only 11 minutes. 11 minutes of horror, violence, and silence broadcast to the world. But in that time, the damage done was irreversible. Facebook pulled the live stream down as soon as it was flagged, but by then, it had already metastasized. Copies of the video had been screen recorded, downloaded, clipped, and passed around like digital contraband. Reddit threads labeled it NSFL, "Do Not Watch," were filled with thousands of comments. Hundreds of people were calling, some screaming, some reporting the video, others unsure if they were watching a short film or an actual execution. By the time SWAT arrived at the Devereaux home, the sun had risen, casting a golden glow on a crime scene drenched in blood. Tyrons didn't run. He didn't hide. He was already outside, sitting on the curb like a man waiting for an Uber. His shirt was soaked in blood, a Glock rested next to him, and he was calmly smoking a cigarette. One of the officers who arrived first said he looked at them with dead, empty eyes. When they asked him why the hell he'd done it, he took one long drag from the cigarette and said, "Because I wanted her to feel what it's like to lose everything. And I wanted y'all to see it." Inside the house, the smell of copper and gunpowder clung to the air like poison. Odell was found slumped in his chair, a can of Sprite still clenched in his hand. Misha's body was face down near the hallway, her arm outstretched like she'd been trying to crawl. Trayvon, bloodied and riddled with bullets, lay next to a bent kitchen knife. Upstairs, officers found Enola, her face frozen in terror, her body limp, shielding someone small beneath her. That someone was Yariya. 3 years old. Shot once in the leg. curled up under her mother, surrounded by blood and silence. When the paramedics lifted Enila's body, they heard the tiniest voice, "Mommy sleeping. Mommy sleeping." It was a miracle. Yariya had survived. They rushed her to the hospital, barely breathing, in and out of consciousness. Doctors later said if the bullet had been an inch higher, she wouldn't have made it. But she did. Somehow, she lived through what no child should ever see. Ever feel. And while the Devereaux home was swarmed with flashing lights and investigators, the rest of the country watched it unfold on their screens like a nightmare they couldn't escape. Facebook released a vague statement within 24 hours, expressing regret over the live stream, vowing to enhance safety protocols. But the damage was already done. The worst thing imaginable had been streamed for the world to witness, violence made viral. Death delivered in high definition. People weren't just mourning. They were haunted. You could scroll past the footage, but you couldn't unsee it. You could mute the sound, but you could still hear the screams. And in the center of it all, one little girl, barely out of diapers, was now the only survivor of a family that was erased in under 15 minutes. An angel who lived. But would never forget. In January 2025, the trial of Tyrone Merriweather began. It was the trial that gripped the nation, a legal showdown as horrifying as the crime itself. Every seat in the courtroom was claimed, and a swarm of cameras hovered outside like vultures. The trial wasn't just about justice, it had become a public reckoning. For the Devereaux family. For social media. For a society addicted to watching tragedy unfold in real time. From the moment Tyrone entered the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, shackled and stone-faced, you could feel the tension. Reporters said the temperature in the room dropped when he walked in, like death itself had taken a seat at the defendant's table. The prosecution wasted no time. They called him a domestic terrorist, a man who weaponized the internet to commit the unthinkable. They showed the GoPro footage to the jury, not the live stream, but the raw, uncut version recovered from his chest camera. It was so graphic that several jurors reportedly turned away. One asked for a break. Even the judge looked shaken. Pixelated screenshots were entered into evidence. Blurred, but still unmistakably human. Odell's final moments in his recliner. Misha's body crumpled mid-sprint. Trayvon on the floor, blood seeping from his shirt. And Enila, caught in a frame with her hands raised, eyes wide with terror. But what chilled the courtroom wasn't the images. It was the audio. One juror cried openly when they heard the line Tyrone muttered as he climbed the stairs, the camera bouncing with each step, "This is for every time you made me feel invisible." The defense tried everything. They painted Tyrone as a broken man, a survivor of a violent upbringing, a childhood filled with neglect and abuse. They said he suffered from untreated schizophrenia, that he'd been failed by the system, by his community, by everyone. They tried to reframe the massacre as a psychotic break, not premeditated murder. But the prosecution countered with months of evidence, the crowbar attack, the restraining order, the silence before the storm. They said this wasn't a breakdown. It was a blueprint. And the jury agreed. After 2 weeks of testimony and just 3 hours of deliberation, the verdict came down like thunder, guilty. 5 counts of first-degree murder. 1 count of attempted murder for the shooting of Yariya. No room for doubt. No insanity plea. No redemption arc. When the judge read the sentence, death by lethal injection, Tyrone didn't blink. He just stared straight ahead, like he'd already left his body. No apologies. No tears. Just the same silence he wore the day he waited outside the house, covered in blood, smoking a cigarette while his daughter cried under her mother's corpse. The courtroom erupted in emotion. Misha's sister collapsed into sobs. Trayvon's best friend punched the bench in front of him. Even the bailiff was seen wiping away a tear. For many, it was justice. But no one walked out of that room feeling victorious. Because no sentence, no matter how final, could undo what had already been burned into their minds. This wasn't just a murder. This was a moment of reckoning. And it demanded more than justice, it demanded change. Within days of the trial's end, the name Yariya was no longer just a child's name. It was a rallying cry. Protesters held up signs with her face on them. Hashtags trended. Petitions exploded. Jariya's law was born not in a government office, but in the raw grief of strangers who had watched too much, too fast, and couldn't stop asking themselves, how the hell did we let this happen? The proposed legislation was bold. It called for mandatory AI intervention on live stream platforms, systems that would analyze audio and video in real time, scanning for weapons, screams, violence, or erratic behavior. If flagged, the stream would freeze instantly until reviewed by a human moderator. No more relying on users to report what they've already watched. No more 11-minute delays. No more snuff films going viral before breakfast. The push was fierce. Lawmakers were divided. Tech giants panicked. Facebook, now Meta, was the first to take the hit. A class-action lawsuit, signed by thousands, argued that the platform's delay in removing the live stream made it complicit in broadcasting trauma. The company settled quickly, quietly. But the damage was done. They issued a public apology. Promised reforms. But for many, it wasn't enough. It was too late. The video had already been saved, reposted, edited into TikToks with eerie music. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, a little girl tried to forget. Yariya was 3 years old when the world stopped for her. She now lives with her aunt on her mother's side, in a quiet suburb far from where her life began. She doesn't talk about the shooting. Doctors say she might not remember everything. But trauma has a way of writing itself into the bones, even when the mind goes quiet. She limps slightly when she walks, her leg never healed quite right. She wakes up some nights crying. But she's in therapy. She colors. She sings. Sometimes, she asks about her mom. And the first thing she said when she came out of surgery, leg shattered and body bruised, was soft and simple, "Did Daddy stop being mad?" That one sentence broke the internet harder than the live stream ever did. Because it forced everyone to look at themselves. Not just Tyrons. Not just Facebook. But us. The viewers. The people who watched, commented, screen recorded. The people who clicked play even when something inside them whispered not to. The people who stayed for all 14 minutes. This wasn't just a murder, it was a live-streamed execution. Cold. Calculated. Broadcast to thousands like it was just another piece of content. What started as a breakup spiraled into a digital tragedy, where a man's obsession became a loaded gun and a family's legacy was erased in real time. It wasn't just blood that was spilled that morning, it was trust, safety, and the illusion that someone, somewhere, is watching closely enough to stop things before they go too far. The Devereaux family represented everything we say we love, tight-knit, hard-working, full of promise. And yet, they were failed. By a system that ignored red flags. By platforms more interested in engagement than accountability. By an audience that watched, waited, and wondered if what they were seeing was real, until it was too late. Because that's the terrifying part, isn't it? If someone had reported that stream in the first 60 seconds, could they have been saved? Or have we become so numb to chaos, so addicted to content, that we don't act until there's already a body on the floor? Sharia's law might change the way we monitor live streams. It might save the next family. But laws don't fix numbness. They don't stop curiosity from becoming complicity. And maybe that's what this story forces us to confront. Not just what Tyrons did, but what we did. What we didn't do. If this story left you speechless, hit that like button and subscribe where we uncover the darkest crimes you've never heard of, and the terrifying truths you'll never forget. Stay aware. Stay human.